At the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis, the marathon was an absolutely chaotic disaster. First off, the entire course was very dusty, and breathing in that dust caused all kinds of injuries, including for one runner who was hospitalized with hemorrhaging after the dust tore his esophagus and stomach lining. The organizer of the race purposely withheld water in order to test the effects of dehydration. So the whole thing was a nightmare from the start. The guy who finished first, Fred Lors, got terrible cramping and had to be picked up in a car that drove him to the finish line. He jumped out of the car and jogged across the finish, confusing people into thinking he'd won. He claimed he did it as the second-place finisher, Thomas Hicks, had been given an injection of rat poison and egg whites as a supposed performance enhancer, along with some brandy. He collapsed during the race and collapsed again right after he crossed the finish line. Since Lors was disqualified, Hicks got the gold. The fourth-place finisher, Felix Carvajal de Soto, was a Cuban national who raised money to attend the Olympics by running the entire length of Cuba. He gambled away all the money when he arrived in the U.S. and showed up for the race in dress clothing. Thankfully, another runner used a knife to cut his pants into shorts. Carvajal stopped at a roadside orchard for a snack during the race, but the apples were rotten, so he was struck with stomach cramps and had to sleep it off. The best part about all of this is that there wasn't much notable about the third-place finisher, Arthur Newton. Amid all this chaos, he just kind of ran the race. The men's marathon at the 1904 Summer Olympics was a disaster. The first to arrive at the finish line was Fred Lors, who had actually dropped out of the race after 9 miles and hitched a ride back to the stadium in a car, waving at spectators and runners alike during the ride. When the car broke down at the 19th mile, Lors re-entered the race and jogged across the finish line. Thomas Hicks ended up the winner of the event, although he was aided by measures that would not have been permitted in later years. 10 miles from the finish, Hicks led the race by 1.5 miles, but he had to be restrained from stopping and lying down by his trainers. From then until the end of the race, Hicks received several doses of strychnine, a common rat poison, which stimulates the nervous system in small doses, mixed with brandy. Another near fatality during the event was William Garcia of the United States. He was found lying in the road along the marathon course with severe internal injuries caused by breathing the clouds of dust kicked up by the race officials' cars. Postman Anderin Carvajal joined the marathon, arriving at the last minute. After losing all of his money in New Orleans, Louisiana, he hitchhiked to St. Louis and had to run the event in street clothes that he cut around the legs to make them look like shorts. Not having eaten in 40 hours, he stopped off in an orchard en route to have a snack on some apples, which turned out to be rotten. The rotten apples caused him to have strong stomach cramps and to have to lie down and take a nap. Despite falling ill from the apples and taking a nap, he finished in 4th place. The marathon included the first 2 Black Africans to compete in the Olympics, 2 Tswana tribesmen named Len Tao and Jan Mashiani. Len Tao finished 9th and Mashiani came in 12th. This was a disappointment, as many observers were sure Len Tao could have done better if he had not been chased nearly a mile off course by aggressive dogs.
In 1971, astronaut Alan Shepard embarked on a historic journey to the moon as part of the Apollo 14 crew. The eyes of the world were fixed on this monumental event, as NASA's meticulous planning culminated in a successful lunar landing. As Shepard stepped onto the moon's surface, he surprised everyone by pulling out a golf ball and club. His passion for golf transcended earthly boundaries, leading to a groundbreaking moment in sports history. With a swift swing, Shepard made history by playing golf on the moon, a feat that captured the imagination of millions. This unexpected act remains a testament to human ingenuity and the spirit of exploration.
In 1908, there was a car race around the world that started in NYC. The route went from NYC to San Francisco, continuing to Valdez, Alaska, across the Bering Strait, through Russia and Europe, with the finish line in Paris. Cars were relatively new, Road infrastructure was limited to only metropolitan areas, and even then, a lot of it was cobbled stone. But what you might have thought is, how in the world can a car get across the Pacific? Duh! They would drive across the Bering Strait during the winter when it froze into an ice bridge. Silly. The race began in February of 1908 and immediately ran into challenges. To list a few: cars breaking down multiple times, lack of usable roads, car-hating people giving wrong directions, and, oh yeah, snow. The first team reached San Francisco in 41 days, but quickly realized that the proposed route from San Francisco to Alaska did not exist. So the organizers allowed teams to ship their cars to Valdez, Alaska, then continue on the ice bridge. Once in Valdez, the teams found out that there is in fact no ice bridge across the Bering Strait anymore, because it melted 20,000 years ago. Small oversight. Organizers then allowed teams to ship their cars across the Pacific to Japan, then Russia, to carry on. Despite all unpredictable and hilariously predictable odds, the winning team arrived in Paris 169 days later.
In the 1760s, John Joseph Merlin, the inventor of roller skates, made a grand entrance at a masquerade party. Picture this. He glides around on his skates, playing the violin, but his lack of skating skills leads to a disastrous collision with a valuable mirror. According to James Turner's The History of Roller Skating, Merlin's mishap was both comical and costly. His failed attempt at showcasing his invention left him injured, his violin broken, and roller skating technique in need of a reset. Imagine the scene. Merlin, full of enthusiasm, combines roller skating with violin playing, only to end up in a chaotic collision that reverberated through history. His ambition to impress turned into a hilarious catastrophe. Eddie Gaedel, a little person who stood 3'7" tall, became the shortest player in Major League history on August 19, 1951, when he stepped to the plate for the St. Louis Browns against the Detroit Tigers. The Browns were a bad team. They went 52-102 in 1951, with an owner, Bill Veeck, who pulled a lot of stunts to get fans into the stadium. Gaedel's appearance was one of them. Veeck signed Gaedel to a major league contract and issued him a uniform with the number 1/8 on the back. Gaedel pinch hit for the game's leadoff hitter, and with orders to crouch down and not swing the bat, walked on 4 pitches. Gaedel was immediately removed for a pinch runner and received a standing ovation from the crowd. What he didn't receive was a lot of money. He was paid just $100 for his one-day appearance in professional baseball. Tragically, Gaedel was only 36 years old when he was beaten to death by men who followed him home from his job at a bowling alley. The only representative from Major League Baseball to show up at his funeral was Bob Kane, the Tigers pitcher who pitched to him.